Tell us about some scary stories that happened to you at work. Not so scary, but when I was 19, I worked in a hotel most of the shift. There was only one employee on the premises. Around 1 or 2 in the morning, a couple with children came to the lobby in a panic with all their luggage. The man said they were leaving immediately. I informed them that they would still be charged for the night. Blah, blah, blah. He agreed, but said they still had to leave. I thought that maybe one of the kids needed to go to the hospital or something. My wife took the kids to the car, and my husband asked, "Did something happen in that room?" I didn't understand what he meant, so he repeated his question. He told me that the TVs were turning on and off by themselves, which is actually not uncommon for an old hotel. However, he added that both children sat up in bed at the same time without waking up and started crying. The father had to shake them to wake them up. They didn't even know they were crying. The family was convinced that there were ghosts in the room, and one of them was targeting the children. It took them a while to get out of there. Later, I asked a colleague if there are ghosts here. She said that once a medium had stayed at the hotel and told her that there were many different spirits here. I don't recall the exact words. She described them, but none of them seemed evil. I made a conclusion. Either a cunning ghost lives there, or the children played a bad joke. I don't believe in ghosts, but one case haunts me. I work in a geriatric retirement center. We had one elderly lady who was already on her deathbed. She kept complaining that she could see her son-in-law in the chair. It might have been true, but he had long been in the other world. As far as I know, their relationship was not the best. Her husband sincerely hated her. She claimed that he was making faces at her. She would also ask, "Do you see all those people hanging from the ceiling?" She thought people and animals were burning. She told me how her dead relatives came to her and made faces. They would burn in the flames before her eyes. I hope that I will never have such hallucinations. I worked in a boarding program for teenage girls. They were housed in historic buildings donated by the city. Most of them were built back in the 19th century and looked, to put it mildly, creepy. During my night shifts, I used to walk around with a flashlight every 30 minutes to check the territory. But in the room around the corner at the end of the corridor, my hair always stood on end. I could feel in my skin that someone was watching me. I would turn my head to the side, and someone would follow me when I came back. A few times I even heard footsteps. After a few months at that job, I had a chance to talk to the girl who lived in that room. I suggested that it must be nice to live in a room without neighbors. She replied, "I'd rather have a roommate than stay there alone. When I go to bed, a shadow in the form of a human figure hangs over the bed. It is constantly watching me. It makes it very difficult for me to fall asleep." She's not the type to make things up, and when she told me what happened to her in that room, I got the chills. Probably, in the house for younger girls, the apparitions are even more intrusive. People there saw figures sneaking around several times. We always tried to stay calm so that the children wouldn't get scared, but to be honest, there were nights when I was afraid to go out into the hallway myself. I went to check the chemistry store at 3 in the morning. It was dark, but I could see through it. There is a switch near the entrance to the store. It works with a delay of 1 second every time it is turned on or off. The store has a fire exit door, the kind that closes slowly and has a small window in the center. I went into the center. I checked it out. Everything was normal, nothing suspicious. When I left, I closed the door and flicked the switch. Before it went off and it was completely dark, I managed to see a solid black figure standing in the middle of the store. I was standing near the door, so I could see it through the window. It wasn't my reflection, because it was dark outside and the light inside was clinically white. Also, I was on the side of the door, so there was no way I could create this reflection. It was not just a fuzzy silhouette in the dark. The figure was standing in the middle of the room, in bright light, 5 meters from the door. When the light went out, I froze and then quietly walked away. I didn't even look in the nearby road mirror to see what was behind me. There was nothing wrong with the store when I checked it, and I don't get paid to investigate supernatural shit. Once I was trained in a hotel. My 16-year-old ass heard that they paid more for night shifts. So I decided to sacrifice my homework to stay up late. He seemed really nice. A week passed, but he didn't come to move out. No one saw him leave. So I asked the security to come and check his room with me. But there was one problem. The room had not been slept in. The bed looked as if no one had ever made it. There was no way it could look like that after a week of living there. We were surprised and then looked up. There was an eyeball hanging from the ceiling. The eyeball was covered in blood. It didn't look like a shackle or a goat. It looked so much like a human eyeball that the guard threw up on the spot. We called for support. The police went into chaos. We are in the center of the UK and guns are not uncommon here. But there is no logical explanation for what happened. In the end, I quit my job and refused to talk to my former colleagues. The police tried to call me, but I ignored them. To this day, I refuse to let strangers into my home. I work at night in a hotel. I've seen ghosts, but they don't scare me too much. I didn't even realize at first that they were something else, not just flesh and blood people. No, the scariest thing I ever experienced was when a 6-foot-tall drunk tried to get even with me in a fit of rage. Because his pregnant wife was hiding from him in our hotel, he spent most of the night trying to track her down to no avail, until his friend noticed her getting ice. He started throwing everything he could at me. So I called the police. While the cops were on their way, he broke into my wife's room and completely smashed it. She came downstairs in a panic, convinced that we would prosecute her for what her husband had done. I took her to the staff office, called the managers, to let them know what was going on and why I had brought the guest to the restricted area. So the inadequate man was forbidden to enter the territory. If he does, he will be arrested on the spot. I know he returned to the city several times, but he stayed in a budget hotel on the other side of the highway. They tolerate the behavior of lesser scumbags. While it's daytime in the place where I live, I'd love to hear more of your stories about the drives. There are a lot of them, and I'm writing from my cell phone, so they'll be a little chewed up. So, the ghost of a man 180 centimeters tall who lives in the kitchen. When I first saw him, he saw me too. At first, I thought it was a guest, even though he flew out the door without touching the ground. The cooks who have been working there for a long time notice all sorts of things, like the stove catching fire or turning off by itself. Pots and pans spin on the stove tops when their backs are turned. Doors have closed by themselves several times. And once when the manager said that the stories about the drives are bullshit, a pack of napkins flew off the shelf and hit him in the face, flying at least half a meter. There are 2 ghosts in the hall. One is an old woman in a Victorian funeral dress and black veil who doesn't seem to realize she's dead, trying to attend someone's funeral. The other looks like a woman in her early 20s, wearing a white dress with ruffles and tiny black velvet shoes. She is a prostitute and loves attention. She is not visible when the hotel is busy, but she begins to appear as a ghost and as a figure reflected in the windows if the hotel is half empty or, God forbid, closed. The former manager used to see her out of the corner of her eye when we were closed in the early days of the COVID. She would regularly ask me to come early because she was scared to death of being alone there after dark. The last one, whom I have never seen, lives on the 5th floor. He likes to make a lot of noise by stomping back and forth in the hallway. In the first days of the coronavirus, about a week before we were quarantined, a guest called us and complained that someone was running around the hallway all night. She was the last guest in the whole damn building. After we reopened, a man and his sister moved in on the 5th floor. She was having dinner with a friend, and he was watching TV. His wallet and keys fell and flew a meter across the room. Assuming it was an accident, the man returned them to the night table. Not a minute later, they flew across the room and hit the dresser. 10 minutes later, he was standing downstairs with the luggage, refusing to leave her a minute longer. Friends, thank you for watching. In the comments below the video, please write your horror stories that happened at work. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. See you soon.